Hi, I'm Adiel, and this is How I DJ. The first time I mixed the records together was probably home with friends. It took a lot of time, a lot of hours of practice before I could really tell that I was mixing. The thing that I love about DJing is that I've always taken it much more like as a discipline. I was really interested in learning the craft. It was like practice and play every day, like 4 to 5 hours a day. It was like doing sports. Just the pure act of mixing two records together was just making me happy. I was like super happy and I felt full.
Backwards in time, the symmetry allows us to go over to the other side in the reverse direction of time to the actual part.
What I did here was an example of a long and blending mix. This is the kind of mix that I really prefer, and I would usually do this kind of mix when I start a DJ set. For me, the mixing, it's kind of it's really important, and also you need to be on the context. And I love to mix and blend long tracks when I start my sets because it makes the flow and everything much more smooth. What really helps me to understand the different volumes of each record in order to don't be too weak with the record that I'm putting in is sometimes to try to mix without the headphones. Also, the volume of the headphones should be kind of really moderated because it can really isolate you from what is happening on the outside. And I would recommend sometimes to just leave the headphones and try to mix just with your ears. Try to go as smooth and as slow as possible in order to catch with my ear the high frequencies of the record that I'm mixing. I usually try to adjust the record on the BPM if I feel that's falling too fast or if it's slowing down. So I have the right time and I have I choose the right moment where actually the mixing, you can't really feel it, you know. Probably the best way to do this is to switch directly on the other record. What I usually do, and I always suggest to do, is to switch to the other record, because once you get to modify it, or once you get to slow it down, you'll probably hear a little bit less on the record that we are mixing out. You can play with the frequencies, you can still, you know, try to subtract the frequencies in a very smooth way. And the flow here, it's really nice because I tend to really try to do perfect blending mixes. And it's fun because sometimes records just go by themselves, and when you find the real connection, you can easily play on the mixing and leave the beat matching on its own. That's basically it. First DJ setup was two Technics, 1210 MK2 and Alanit Xone 2 channels, Xone 22. There was a big game changer for me because I got the opportunity to practice in the club where I became resident. And practicing in a club with a proper sound system was a game changer for me because it's like you are already there, you get used to the sound system, and it's something that it's not really easy to do when you are home. You start listening to records as they sound, and you have, you know, all the elements to have a good practice. And I used to play even 7-8 hours in the club when the club was closed, and it was a nice way to learn even more about myself, and of course a great opportunity to, you know, meet with a sound system. Of course, I think that the sound system is one of the most important things in a club.
If you're looking for all hit music that reaches out and squashes your pride, you just found it.
Bass, making you move. Bass, you feel the groove. We got that bass, it's in your face. Bass, feeling the place. Bass, making you move. Bass, you feel the groove. We got that bass, it's in your face. Bass, feeling the place.
So what I did here, it was quite an example of a more quick and fast mixing. I would usually do this kind of mixing when I have more empty tracks and when we have a very, very hard kick and when we can find a way to get through the frequencies easily with another very empty track. So it will be less hearable, less effective, but sometimes you just get to use the pauses, and of course knowing the record also here it's really important because you have to know when you can do this, but it's a much more dynamic way, and I would usually use this kind of mix when I am during my peak time set or when I already find the kind of connection with the crowd and I can play with it and feel more free to mix. When I started DJing, there was no social medias that were showing that what DJs were really doing. So you had to go out and party. I got so much influenced by all the artists that were performing in my city, and all the club scene was big influence itself. Not only Goa Club, but also Brancaleone in Rome and Rashomon as well. So the whole Roman local scene was like big influence. Of course, just saying a few names, maybe Ricardo Villalobos and Richie Otin, Donato Dozzi, Moody Man. Probably those are the main influences, and I think I was really lucky because I got to listen to really such an amazing music at the time. So here I have my reverb, a Strymon Blue Sky, which is one of the most majestic reverbs. I simply love how it adds layers on the tracks. And it's really nice because it has 3 modes, 3 types, a long damp, a pre-delay, and a high damp. So I usually kind of have it set, and then I play with it in between the tracks, but I also use it to emphasize pauses and also to have a little bit more of air before drops. So it's really nice because it adds a whole full world of atmospheres and layers to the track.
The cubs play in their mother's warm glow, while the rest of the world begins to wait by the grace of the sunlion. The birds create a new breeze in the air, a circular wind that comes paired with the sweetest song, a melody that can only be chased until it settles on a branch. The gallop of horses forms the rise and fall of each hill.
The thing that I'm most drawn into, it's mixing. I love mixing. Just the pure act of mixing, it really gets all my attention. Thing that with vinyl, I think it's pretty different is the kind of flow that you can reach. And also, I love to set the mood. And this thing, I kind of, do it pretty much better with records than with other stuff. It happens quite nice with records because if you have the perfect conditions and the sound is good, you are in the right mood, the party will be probably like a good party. So organization of the vinyl bag is really important. I honestly have a real nice association with the cover of the record and with the record itself. So for me, it's really much more direct because as soon as I see the record, I know what kind of position it will have in my bag. So I usually have a starting part, an introduction part, a peak time part in my set, and sometimes I also like to close down in the last half hour, but it really depends on where I'm playing and at what time I am playing. So this is maybe the most important thing. The difficult thing comes when you have more than one show in a weekend. And you gotta be really organized and choose your records and make your record bag very careful in order to be ready to everything. What I do is simply know where I put my things. I put let's say I divide the record bag in 3 parts, as I said. So you probably I'll probably know that in these 10 first records, I have my introduction, my starting, my intro. So I know exactly what I'm going to look for the records. Same thing for the rest of the bag. I know that the more I go on, the more the records will be peak time records and will be more driving. Get to familiarize with your records and know them very well, because that would be very helpful to play them also in different and creative ways. The best advice that I would give is to feel inspired. DJing is not a trend. You need to be eclectic, be different, and I think that the best advice is to really learn the craft and make it yours, and put things on your perspective and on your context.